On this episode of Wealth Magazine Business Access, Patrick Hylton's journey to the top of Jamaica's #1 commercial bank.
I think people might be surprised to hear me say that I don't see what I have accomplished as any great thing.
His commitment to growing NCB.
I've hitched my wagon to the NCB star, and so I drink, eat, sleep, dream NCB.
And taking his destiny into his own hands.
First lesson I learned was that someone's opinion of me doesn't have to be my reality, irrespective of who it is. I'm Patrick Hylton. I'm a Group Managing Director of National Commercial Bank, Jamaica Limited, which means that I'm effectively the Chief Executive Officer of the company. I am a country boy. Like some people have said in the past, came to Kingston where I decided to pursue further education, to pursue a professional career in banking. And made some progress, and this is where I am today. So I actually was born in Four Parts, Clarendon. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's about 4 miles outside of Maypen. I was actually delivered at home, not born in a hospital or anything like that. You know, a midwife who delivered me as a child. If my memory serves well, I heard that I wasn't crying, so that dipped me in some hot water. That did the trick in terms of getting me crying and to start breathing and so on. So I grew up in the country, attended Four Parts Primary School, did the common entrance exams as we had it in those days. I passed initially for Clarendon College, which was a little distance from home because I had to go to Maypen, and then from Maypen we had to travel to Chapelton. At Clarendon College, I wasn't so focused. I was not in the way in which my mother would have liked anyway. I was more interested in football and in long distance running and those types of activities. So she decided that she wanted me closer to home. And so for second form, I was transferred to Glenmere High School, which was in Maypen, much closer. Not as involved at the time in the various sporting activities, very focused on academics. And so I attended Glenmere for the next 6 years. Did up to 5th form there, did GC, O-levels at the time. Then went on to 6th form where I did GC, A-levels. Country life was, very, very interesting. It didn't have the range of activities that you see people have access to today. Of course, we didn't have access to the internet and so on, But we made do with what we had. One of the things that I started doing early, very strongly encouraged by my mother to do it, was reading. So I would read everything in sight and more if I could find it. And very early what my mother and father did was to invest in a set of encyclopedias for me, because they saw that I had a very inquiring mind and was always questioning things, wanting to learn new things, wanting to understand things. Initially, I had no interest in banking. It's funny, my interest was more towards the sciences. So the thought was that I'd probably do something like engineering, And so when I left school, I actually applied for a job. At the time to 2 companies. One was the Alcoa, I don't think it was Jam Alcoa yet, the bauxite company. And I applied for a position I heard they had in the boiler room, right? Because that sounded like something that would be interesting to me. I applied also to Jamaica Public Service Company. And the thought was, I used to be excited by these guys climbing up on the light pole and so on. And while I was waiting to hear from them, a friend of my mother mentioned that Scotia Bank needed a teller at their Maypen West branch. So sent in a letter of application. They called me for an interview. At the end of the interview, they asked me to go to see their doctor, which was not too far away. Went to the doctor, did a little checkup, and the doctor said I was fine. Went back to the branch and told them, they said, start working today. So that was my entry into banking, and the rest, as I say, is history. I would use the opportunity, even as a teller, to try and understand other aspects of the bank, the roles and functions of other persons. I would do this after, my telling duties had been completed or early in the morning. I'd be always asking questions of my supervisors or managers and so on, just trying to understand. I'd be trying to find material that I could read to give me more insights into the business of banking and to have a better appreciation for it. And it worked. I was there, like I said, initially for 2 years. Then, I started making some inquiries about formal banking education and heard about a program which was then at the College of Arts, Science and Technology, which was being conducted by the Institute of Bankers through UTech, which would lead to a diploma in banking, a professional banking certification from the Chartered Institute of Bankers in London. So after about 2 years, I resigned and I left, moved to Kingston to attend classes at UTech. I've often reflected and said maybe the best years of my life, in a sense, was when I was engaged in formal academic study. Just from the point of view of learning, right? Because I like to learn. I'm always learning and I'm excited about learning and so on. So that was good. But I also had a very fundamental experience while I was at UTech. What I call my Damascus type moment, as I've told many of my colleagues, right? I've told it to the staff here, I tell it to people all the time, because I think that particular experience changed my life totally, changed my outlook, changed my perspective. It has changed my attitude, and I think it is largely responsible for, a lot of what I've accomplished. When I was in school, my focus was primarily on the sciences. I went to the bank. The bank had well-established procedures and so on for accounting for the bank's money and for conducting the various activities of the bank. And when I went to UTech, one of the foundation courses was in accounting. And for some reason, I don't know if it was a mental block or what it was, but I found myself struggling with accounting. I had a really difficult time. And I remember the Institute of Bankers at the time would provide an expatriate who would come to lead the program of teaching in Jamaica. It was a gentleman by the name of Brian Smith. Very nice guy. And he was the head of the program. He also taught accounts. And, I was struggling so much with accounts, doing so poorly, that Mr. Smith called me to his office, said to me that, accounts is so fundamental to banking education, and it is obvious that I'm struggling with it, and that he didn't think it was working, and that he was going to suggest that I probably take a sabbatical, right? Maybe find a job, think seriously about what I wanted to do, make sure it didn't involve accounting, and then, pursue that program. And I remember initially leaving Mr. Smith's office feeling a little dejected. And, as I used to live off the boulevard, almost down to Duane Park there in Patrick City, and I would take the 75 bus at the time from Papine on the way down. And as I went on the bus, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to prove to Mr. Smith that he's wrong. First lesson I learned was that someone's opinion of me doesn't have to be my reality, irrespective of who it is, right? The second, but more important thing I learned was that I was a master of my own destiny, and that my own accomplishments and achievements would be a function of my efforts, my determination, and what I was willing to sacrifice to make it happen, right? And then the third thing that I learned from that was that don't be constrained by the norms, right? Because the fact of the matter is that if you were to tell somebody that you would have done this and accomplished it within this time, most people would have said to you that it was impossible. And that conditioned my attitude going forward. So that, for example, by the end of the first term, I had finished the entire accounting syllabus for the year on my own, because I was no longer waiting on the lecturer. I was no longer waiting on somebody to teach me, right? Because I realized that I could learn and I could develop. And you know what's funny? We never at that time had access to Dr. Google. You know, and I often say to people, can you imagine if we had access to Dr. Google, the way in which we have it now, unrestricted and so on, you know, what could have happened? And for me, that is what informed my attitude, not only in relation to the rest of the program, but also in relation to my professional career. Michael Hylton, after he had bought the majority shares in the bank, had approached me some months later to ask me if I'd join the team at NCB. I'd said to him that I didn't want to join at that time. I think it's well known that prior to NCB, I was at FinSec, right? And I was the Chief Executive Officer of FinSec for somewhere around 6 years, going from 1997. I was appointed in March 1997, and I was there until I left in June of 2003. Now, by that time, FinSec had substantially wound down its activities. And the question for me was, you know, what would I do next? And sort of in preparation for that next phase of my life, I'd been looking at a number of options. One option was to go away, do further education and so on, and then transition into something else. A large part of my family had migrated and so on, and I was thinking along those lines. I actually applied to Harvard University. I was accepted. I got a scholarship. I deferred. I never attended eventually, right? Because I attempted to defer again, and they told me that I couldn't. And then I applied to Wharton, University of Pennsylvania. I was also accepted to do the MBA because I was in discussion with one of the top consulting firms about transitioning into a role there, and so on. And they said it would help if I had this, you know, Ivy League MBA. And then I decided I was gonna go. So I started selling stuff. Actually sold a townhouse I had, sold my furniture, I'm trying to remember if I sold my vehicle by that time. And then they sent us some preterm work. And when I started doing the preterm work, a lot of it was integration and differentiation. I said to myself, no, I don't think I want to go through this again. So I had a rethink. I decided I was gonna stay. I was gonna, you know, pursue my professional career. And when I say stay, I mean stay in the work world, because I also had a number of offers from, quite frankly, around the world. I had offers in Europe, I had offers in Asia, I had offers in South America in terms of work. But I didn't want to leave Jamaica. I had no interest in residing abroad, and I felt I wanted to stay here. So I had a couple of options here. And I'll say this, that at the end of the day I had to make a decision. And so, you know, the decision that I made was to join NCB, where I had an offer. Michael Hylton, after he had bought the majority shares in the bank, had approached me some months later to ask me if I'd join the team at NCB. I'd said to him that I didn't want to join at that time because I didn't want it to look as if we had just sold the bank and then, you know, subsequently joining. So I said to him I was looking at some other options and so on, but they were relentless in their pursuit. And after about a year and 15 months post the transaction, I decided to accept the offer and to join. So I joined initially as the deputy MD, deputy at the time to Auburn Hill. That was in June of 2003. And then in, I think it was November of 2004, on Auburn's resignation, I was appointed as the group managing director, a position I hold on till today. And I mean, it has been a wonderful journey. It has been a tremendous experience. If you track the history of NCB's performance over the time. I think it speaks, for itself. I've had a great team working with throughout the years. I've had great support. I've had the platform of a great organization to work with, which has enabled me in many respects to achieve all the greatest aspirations I've ever had, not just for myself but for NCB. My philosophical outlook on NCB is that I'm a part of NCB, and NCB is a part of me. I tell my people all the while that I've hitched my wagon to the NCB star, and so I drink, eat, sleep, breathe, dream NCB. Right? So I love NCB, and NCB is family as far as I'm concerned. When I look at leadership along the next dimension, which I call strategy, right? Which is just in terms of understanding the environment, where it is going, anticipating trends, not only leading and following trends, but anticipating trends, creating, what I call banking next, right? That is where we are focused as an organization. We have capabilities within NCB that people are going to be surprised by when they see the next series of what is unfolding. And we have engaged the customer in a number of new ways. We continue to develop new ways of engaging our customers and continue to keep the focus on improving the quality of that experience. It's a little low at the top, so sometimes you're not sure of what are the misconceptions and so on. But what I will say is that I think people might be surprised to hear me say that I don't see what I have accomplished as any great thing up to now. Yeah, I look at what we have accomplished and so on, and I say, yeah, that's good. But my aspirations, my ambitions are so much loftier, so much greater than where we are. So I think that's one thing that might surprise people. The other thing I mentioned very quickly that might surprise people is that at the end of the day, I'm a very humble person. And maybe that is what drives my outlook on my own accomplishments. Because at the end of the day, I have to be able to, in my own mind, recognize that I am just a human being like anybody else. So I'm very humble. I respect everybody. The only thing you will always have control over in any set of circumstances is your attitude. Every time I see crisis, the first thing I see is opportunity. I think the most important thing in life is your attitude. Yeah? Someone said, I'm not sure it is, that your attitude determines your altitude, right? And I'll say this as well, that the only thing you will always have control over in any set of circumstances is your attitude towards those set of circumstances. So I tell people, every crisis, every situation carries with it, the Chinese proverb, right? The seed of at least an equivalent benefit. And I say in most instances, a tremendously higher benefit, right? But you have to be focused. You have to have the right approach. And so, every time I see crisis, the first thing I see is opportunity. You have to work hard. You work smart, but you also have to work hard. There is no substitute at the end of the day for putting in the effort, for putting in the work, right? And, I have found in my own experience, as another person said in a quotation, that I am a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it. As you develop, which I think is very important to underpinning and driving success, is to help people, right? A lot of times we think that by helping people, even by contributing resources and so on to them, you might be undermining what you have. But you're also building a support base, you're building capacity, right? And you're developing others as something that is almost like a karma. It comes back to you in terms of your own opportunities and so on in very, very strange but powerful ways. And I've found that consistently throughout my experience. So I'm always willing to help people, always willing to see where I can contribute to somebody's development. And you know, I take joy in it, seeing them, you know, improve, and I find that ultimately it is beneficial. My mother inculcated in me the habit of reading. My mother spent a lot of time encouraging me to be curious. My mother used to give me on a regular basis, daily basis, various quotations and discuss with me what they were saying. Because, you know, quotations are often snippets of wisdom. And she was saying to me that this is very succinctly, you know, so I'm a walking text of quotations. The staff here will tell you almost anything I can find a quotation for, right? Because they still reside here in my head, you know. So, you know, people ask me who has the greatest impact on your life and on your development. I'll say it without hesitation. It has been my mother. A lot of people don't know this, right? And they may think otherwise. Even though I'm a huge fan of track and field, I'm a bigger fan of tennis. Right, so I'm constantly watching Tennis Channel. Yeah, and even at home, that sometimes poses some challenges in terms of, you know, what to watch at a particular time, because I'll watch Tennis Channel. As long as tennis is on, I'll watch it. In terms of philanthropic activities, I have an approach to it on a personal level. I think at the organizational level, NCBA is deeply engaged, and that is well known, right? Through the foundation, we do so many different things. On a personal level, I'm also deeply involved, but I do it quietly. And my biggest focus is around students in school who need help with school fees, right? Who are struggling, who would need the opportunity that I had, right? And I'm always very sympathetic to that sort of situation, where there are people who are in school who are having challenges, right? Good attitude, good academic capabilities, but lacking in resources. And that's something I've been doing for a number of years. There are people who have taken throughout the entire program of study at the university in different disciplines. Wealth to me is a noble aspiration, yes? And why do I say that? Because we all know the benefits that come from wealth, yeah? It gives you the capacity to do many of the things you'd like to do, right? And sometimes if you don't have it, you're unable to do. But more than that, wealth enables you to not only do well, but to also do good. And I think that is the ultimate.